Hey guys, welcome back. We are going to be starting week 8. We are now at the halfway point for the semester, so that's pretty exciting. We've gotten halfway there. This week we are going to be doing the very first assessment that you're going to be doing on yourself, and it's going to be an assessment over learning preferences. And then we're going to be doing another activity over procrastination, which is kind of just a cool little activity that we do that kind of helps you assess first of all, recognizing ways in which you procrastinate, but then also kind of thinking of ways using the reading beforehand to think of ways that you could potentially, prevent yourself from procrastinating or try to work on skills to keep you doing your work a little bit ahead of time, not only for school, it could be other projects and things that you have going on, it could be for your actual job. And so that exercise is kind of a good practice on how to figure out ways to help yourself out in that area. Because if you're anything like me, I am a procrastinator by nature, and I was in college as well. And I always had convinced myself that procrastination was a good thing because I needed that pressure to get my work done at the very last minute. And I needed that kind of pressure in order to do my best work. I did make it happen. Obviously, I did manage to graduate from college, but I will have to admit, looking back, I did cause myself a lot more stress than I probably needed to. And there were times that I, did get work done ahead of time in college. And I do remember those times being nice because I didn't feel that kind of pressure. And I actually freed myself up to do other things that I wanted to be doing, if I wanted to be able to hang out with my friends or see my family and things like that. And because I wasn't waiting until the last minute and putting myself under that immense amount of pressure, it was nice to get things done a little bit ahead of time. And it also freed me up for any kind of emergencies if, something came up, or if I needed to study for a test, or there were some other things that I needed to take care of. It was nice to be able to not procrastinate always, but in general, I tended to be a big time procrastinator, and it was pretty stressful, but I still managed to get through it. And I'm sure there's a lot of you out there that are also naturally procrastinators. I think a lot of people are. It's kind of human nature for a lot of people. And then the very last exercise that we're going to be doing is one that is helpful for time management. And so we'll kind of go through them real quickly, and I'll show you that one in a little bit more detail. But the first activity that we're going to be doing over learning preferences, after you finish the reading about learning preferences, you're going to take this survey. It's called the VARK Learning Style Survey. And you're basically going to click on the link here in order to take the survey. You do need to answer all the questions, and all of the questions are geared towards you can choose multiple answers per question. So you don't just have to choose one answer if there are 3 out of the 5 answers that are available, because it's set up kind of like a multiple choice test. If 3 out of the 5 that are available for you to choose describe you and your learning style or ways that you prefer to learn, you can choose all 3. You don't just have to pick one. And there may even be some of the questions that none of them apply to you. And so that would be the only time that you would maybe not answer a question, is if you are reading the prompt and you see that none of the answers actually really describe you or your learning preferences. Then you can leave those ones blank if need be. But for the most part, you may have at least one of the things that are available to you as an answer that you would choose. But a lot of times there's going to be multiple ones per question that you can answer, and that's okay to answer as many of them as apply to you. And then when you finish the learning style assessment, you're going to have basically a tab that you can click on that's going to take all of your scores, and then you're going to get basically like a dashboard that's going to show you your results. So you need to be able to use your results and understand them. You need to read through it because it's going to give you a little bit of a readout that gives you some information about each of the 4 areas of the VARK learning styles, and it's going to show you your highest scores in each of those 4 areas. So basically, most people are usually multimodal, which means that they have a pretty large score in at least 2 of the 4 areas. But sometimes there's going to be one area that's really going to be a high score, and then most of your other areas might be, they might be a little bit high, but really not compared to the one area that you really score highly in. So some people are going to have results where they may have 2 or 3 of the categories that are kind of similar. And then there's going to be some people that have one category that's very high compared to the others. And that's just basically telling you your your preferred way of learning. So some people, some people prefer to hear information. They do better when somebody is speaking to them and they can hear the information, or by watching like videos and things like that, because they learn better that way. That's just the way that their brain works. And then you have some people that prefer to read information. And then you have other people that are more hands-on. They like to actually learn by, taking things apart, putting things back together, figuring things out, using their hands, being more active in the learning process. So the questions are geared towards kind of figuring out your learning preferences. And most of you probably have an idea of what your learning preferences are. But what's good about this questionnaire is that it also gives you information based off of your high scores. It gives you information such as study techniques for your learning preferences. And it gives you a lot of other good information that's helpful to you, because you can take that information that you get, and wherever your high scores lie on the VARK learning style assessment, you can take some of that information it gives you about studying techniques, even some other ways that, like, if you're sitting in a classroom, if you have trouble at certain times in certain classes being able to focus or pay attention, it even has techniques that you can use that are centered around your learning style that you can try in the classroom to try to help you actually retain more information and learn better. So it's a really cool assessment. I like doing this assessment with my classes, and we've been doing it for years. And we only started doing it online within like the last year or so, because before, when we had to use textbooks, we actually had a VARK learning style assessment within the textbook, but now you can do it online. It makes it a little bit faster and easier. Just be aware that when you do the activity that goes along with this survey, so you're first going to take the survey by clicking here, taking the survey, and then submitting it and getting your results. Read through your results, make sure you understand all the information about where your high scores are, and then you're going to come back and you're going to answer these 3 questions for your assignment, basically. But you need to make sure you understand your VARK learning style assessment, and you need to understand where you need to actually put that information about yourself, about how you scored, into your answers here on the activity that we're doing. So just read through the directions after you complete the survey, and then you're going to basically post that. And you're going to do it either in a text entry box, or you're going to do it as a Microsoft document upload. But you can either copy these questions, or just, if you're going back and forth between pages and kind of answering them, that's fine. But just make sure you're using information directly from your scores on the VARK learning style to answer these questions. All right, we are going to go back now to the next one that we're going to be doing for this week. Just wait for everything to load. Oh goodness, it's taking forever. Okay, so then you're going to have a couple more sections to read here, taking the wheel and time management. And this is where you're going to do your activity over procrastination. So when you click on this one, I believe it's just a few questions that you have to answer. You need to do the reading that comes before this in order to basically answer these more in full and use some of the information from the reading. There should be a list of causes of procrastination that will be on the reading before this exercise, and then you can use that in order to answer these questions. And you're going to do the same thing. It's going to be the text entry box, or you can do it as a Microsoft document upload, where you're going to answer these 3 questions basically. So that one's pretty easy. Just make sure you do the reading that comes before this activity, so that way you know how to answer it in full. And then the very last one I like to go over, because it's sometimes confusing for some students, because the way that they get their scores on this time management activity sometimes is a little confusing. So you're going to read this section on more about time. And then when you click on this activity of where did all my time go, it's basically a chart where you're tracking all of the things that you basically do in a week. And you can basically, throughout this week, you can choose a day that you're going to kind of, in general, track all of the activities that you do. So you can basically have almost like a chart where you can see where you're spending your time, and choose a day that's like a typical day where you're doing most of the normal typical things that you normally do in a day, and track that day, one of the days this week, whichever day you choose. And the directions are right here. You do need to read through this so you kind of understand how to actually put your hours and scores here. And then this that's highlighted in red is basically your directions of what you need to do in order to submit this. So basically what it's showing is different activities that are normal for most people within any given week. So obviously sleeping, if you in general sleep 7 hours a night and that's kind of normal for you, well, then you can figure out in a 7-day week how many total hours per week you usually spend sleeping. Eating, that could be preparing food and then actually eating the food, just depending on how your day goes. If you're the type of person that eats out more often, then, you can account for that. Or if you spend a lot of time cooking because you enjoy cooking, you can account for that as well. And basically what you're doing is you're going through all of these different activities that are, normal for a lot of people. If it doesn't apply to you and it's not something that you ever do, you're obviously going to put a 0 here. If it's something that maybe you only spend 30 minutes doing and not a full hour, then you're going to have to put 0.5 instead of putting 30 minutes, because it's going to help you when you total everything up at the end. So just make sure, if let's say it takes you a half an hour to drive to work, well, then you're going to put 0.5 hours. And that's going to be more helpful when you go to add everything up at the end, when you have to tally up all your scores. So just be prepared for that. If you do something that needs a 30-minute increment, then that's what you're going to put instead of saying 30 minutes. And so go through all of these and just kind of try to determine in general, how often you do these things throughout a week, how many hours you spend doing these things. And then if you have anything else that in general you do typically throughout a week that you did not see already listed here, then you can go ahead and type it into other, and then you can determine how many hours you spend per week doing that activity. Just keep it professional. I don't need to know every single activity that you do in a week. So there's some things you don't necessarily need to disclose on this activity. But after you're done and you basically figure out in any given week how many hours you spend doing all of these different activities, and any activities that you add on that you maybe do that are not listed here, you're going to basically add up all of the hours and get a total. And that's going to be an in general total for the week of how often you spend doing all of these different activities. And so when you get your total number, you're basically going to not only copy this chart and put it either in the text entry box or put it onto a Microsoft Word document in order to fill it out. But once you get the total, you're going to type that in here, and then you're going to add up, obviously, your total hours for each category, which is what you're going to put here. Then you're going to subtract this total hours that you spent doing all of these activities from 168. There's 168 hours in a week. So even if you end up getting a number that is bigger than 168, that's okay. That's not a bad thing, but you're still going to subtract it from 168. So it is okay if you get a negative number here, because that actually happens quite often, because people determine in general that, they spend a lot of hours doing certain activities. And what this chart allows you to do after you look at it after the fact is you're going to be able to see that there's certain activities that you spend a lot of time doing that, could be some of that time you could maybe allot to more useful things that are going to help you get towards your goals, that are going to help you be more successful in school, in work, in life. Because if you're spending 40 hours a week playing on social media, if that's really not necessary and you can find a way to kind of curb that a little bit and lessen up some of those hours, well, then that's something that you can apply towards studying, towards other things that need to get done so you can do the things that you need to do to reach your goals, to get your homework done, to be successful in school, in life, all of that. And so once you basically determine how many hours you spend doing all of these things and you get your total, you're either going to have a number smaller than 168, which is going to basically say that you have a little bit of spare time left over in the week. And that's good. That shows that's time that you can actually spend studying, that you could be doing some of the things that you need to do. And then some of you are going to find that you have a number that is larger than 168, and you're going to get a negative number, which means that somewhere in all of these activities that you're accounting for, you're spending a lot of time doing some things that probably you could cut a little bit of that time out and free up some more time for yourself. And it's just basically a good chart that you can look at after you fill it all out, and you can really go, okay, maybe I don't need to spend so much time talking on the phone. Maybe I can cut that back a little bit, figure out a way to do that, or attending events, or, my leisure time. Maybe I need to cut out a little bit of my leisure time so I can get some more things done. But it's just a good way to kind of see an overall view of what you do throughout an entire week and try to determine where there might be some areas that you could free up some time for yourself. If you get a score that's larger than 168, because that likely means that you're doing a lot of things that is basically keeping you from having that extra amount of time that you may need for studying and doing homework. So that's basically the gist of this exercise that you're doing. So once you copy this chart and then you put it in the text entry box or in your Microsoft Word document, you'll fill it out, fill out all the hours you spend per week doing all of these different things, and then complete this part where I can see it on the exercise as well. And then you're basically following up on number 3. How did you spend your 168 hours in a week? And it's kind of a way for you to self-reflect really quickly. Okay, did I spend it on things that I really needed to be doing? Or did I spend it on things that, maybe I was slacking off a little bit and I was doing some activities that really honestly I didn't need to spend that much time on. So that's kind of a little self-reflection area on number 3. So going back from there, let's go back to our week. That is pretty much for week 8. That's pretty much everything that we're going to be doing. You'll just have your readings and then you're going to have these 3 activities to do. If you have any questions about any of these, like the learning preferences assessment, if the link doesn't work, it should. I tried it out and it still works fine. So when you click on it, it should redirect you to a new page where you'll be able to take the assessment. The only time I've ever had students have issues with it is if they have a lot of restrictions on their computer, like their firewall or something like that, and it's not allowing you to open it up because of that. You may have to try it on your phone or something along those lines if it's not going to work on your computer, because sometimes people have their security settings on so high on their computers, their home computers, that it may not let you open up this third-party website so you can take the assessment. So that may happen, but I've only had it happen a couple of times in the last year or so that we've been doing this. So it should work for everyone. It's very rare that somebody has an issue with that. But other than that, that's pretty much all we're doing for week 8. We're starting our first self-assessment that you're going to be doing, and then just a couple of activities, just kind of going over procrastination and just a chart where you can actually look at how you spend time throughout the week and kind of, give yourself a little self-reflection on things that you're doing and maybe some things that you could lessen what you're doing. So that way you can give yourself more time to get your studying done, to get your homework done, to get, even if it's a time crunch for you to get to work and things like that, your necessary activities, maybe you can look through that chart and determine some ways that you might be able to cut out some hours doing some things that you don't necessarily need to be doing as much of. But other than that, I am going to go ahead and log off here. I hope you all have a great week, and just email me if you have any questions, and I will see you all next week for week 9.